Welcome back, guys. Today we'll be doing our second layer on the value sphere, and I have the same values laid out as first time. And you'll notice that I have sped this up for the paint mixing. So I'm just going to go over some of the keynotes as you watch me recreate my values. This has been sped up 4 times. So I have my titanium white on the right. I have my ultramarine blue. And then I have my cadmium red, which I am emphasize for my students using the CAD red hues as they're safer. Now, one thing to note is that I had forgotten, I guess it just slipped my mind, because I normally work wet into wet paint a lot, that this first layer took over a week to dry. So it was wet to the touch for over 1 week. And I could have put another layer of paint on top of it, but for this exercise I really want the first layer to dry for you guys. So I think that if you are in a hurry or a rush, you should use the burnt umber, burnt sienna. They're going to dry a lot faster than the cadmiums, or cadmium in general. So as you're watching me mix these paints, you want to mix the blue and the red, again as a quick summary, into a sort of neutral color of purple, because red and blue make purple. But what's interesting is that blue is cool, red is warm, and somewhere when you have the right balance of the two colors and paints, you're going to create sort of a neutral gray. It'll still be purplish compared to, say, the burnt umber, which creates a much more like a darker value on one end and also more neutral grays. All right, so the first thing I do is I mix it up, and I will have a very dark value. And as I start moving into the lighter values, I want to have a total of 7. And I'm adding white into my master clump of dark value on the right-hand side there. But as I move to the light, I'm noticing that the value is very cool. So you'll see me add a lot of cadmium red into these values to sort of neutralize it, because it's if it has to be cool or warm, I want the painting to have more of a warm glow in it. I want the ball to have more of a warm glow than a cool glow, as a general rule of thumb. And that's my final value, the white, with just a little bit of value. And I'm now moving my piles of paint so that they match my painting a little bit better below. This is just a personal choice. Okay, so what I'm doing now at this point is I have my values. 1, 2, 3, 4 is my middle. 1, 2, 3, 4 is my middle. 5, 6, and then 7. And I'm leaving a spot for a 0.5 again, because I'm going to mix anyways, but really so much of I find that painting is a subtlety of light. I mean, it lays over a surface, it shines on a surface. Light is of infinite importance to an artist and understanding it, and a lot of that is just getting your right, clean values, so that you can really create and manipulate the paint around to make it feel like light is real. Light actually acts the exact opposite way, a very different way than paint does, where paint, really everything goes from like a white canvas or a bright canvas, and you have these pigments that are values towards a darkness. And when you mix them, you create a darkness. So white preserves the luminosity of white, but every color that you add creates more value combinations towards the darkness. It feels like it entropies towards the darkness. Whereas light, you have the darkness, the blackness of space, and then you have a star, and it's bright and it creates light, and that light it appears very, at least to us, it appears very bright white because of the combination of colors, where you have red, yellow, and blue, right? RGB, sorry, red, green, and blue, RGB, and the red and all of those combined, when they mix, they don't go darker like inks and pigments and paint. They go brighter. So it's very interesting, and for that reason, you want to, with paint, try to make it feel like it's luminous unto itself, and it's very hard to do that. It takes years and years of practice, and there's different schools of realism, classical realism, Flemish, Florence, I imagine even, and different schools have been around for hundreds of years, so they each teach a different way. This is just a general introduction. I don't know a lot of that stuff, so my interest was just learning how to create it and know how to use it without a very deep understanding of it, frankly. So that's enough for what I've done, and now I'm going to work into my value sphere, and let's get started. So today I'm going to kind of look over what I have here, and as I look at this area here is dark. I don't know if you can see that, because I was I think I took a paper towel and I wanted to see if it was dry, because I knew it was still wet. I just didn't know how, and it pushed it all the way back to the clear vellum. So that clear vellum actually is picking up. There's a transparency there, and I'm also going to get this little hair off randomly. We have animals in our house, cats and dogs, and so there's a lot of hair on here. What else do I see? I see the Terminator here. I see the cast shadow is shot down. The center of light comes through this, right through this, like an axis for a planet or a ball. And then perpendicular to that is going to be my Terminator axis, always 90 degrees from the light, single light source. And everything kind of gets lighter as it gets to the brightness of it. And this is the center, very, very center of it, because there's an oval here. All of these layers are ovals that kind of pour over from a very bright white to the grays to eventually to our very dark Terminator, or darkest value. So up here it's going to be a very subtlety of form, and I'm going to lay, again, just more tiles all the way around. And I'm probably going to do the background again too. I would encourage you to do a full layer as a beginner. So get your values down. Again, practice your soft edges, blurring them, feathering them. Get your soft edges down for each one, like we did in the first video. And then work yourself into the sphere and work your tiles out. I was taught, and I teach, that you really want to work on your first gradient, not on the edge, because it's going to be a lot of work to get that gradient along with feathering it into the background. And more importantly, you really want to just focus on the gradient itself, just that single gradient, and does the light flow. There are mistakes with this, aside from it being thin in areas. The mistake is that the Terminator comes down, the light comes down on the axis going right through, and then the cast shadow is parallel, as the underdrawing indicates. This could probably come out a bit further. My shadow could come out a bit further as I'm looking at it. From there to there to there, I think it's okay actually. But as I float it 90 degrees, let me float it this way. As I float it 90 degrees, the Terminator actually comes down a little low here. So I can bring it up a bit. And then there's just inconsistencies here, inconsistencies of form. So it needs to be smooth, and for example, where this point comes up to the lost edge, it should be higher on both sides a little bit maybe. Sorry, this side more than this side. It's too high right now, so I need to fix that so there's the same distance all the way through it. So I'm going to go in and create another sphere, and this time I'm using smaller brushes. As a general rule of thumb, when painting the realism, you do as much as you can with the largest brush on the first layers, and then eventually you get into more detail, which means you need smaller brushes. So where I believe this was my smallest brush on the last one I did, maybe I used this one actually. I believe I remember complaining about the treacle natural sable. It's actually a nice brush. I just have to trim away some of this, some of these extra hairs. I'm now going to use a smaller one because these are the smallest natural sables. I use a lot of synthetics in my paintings that I currently do. Landscapes, oceanscapes. So I'm going to be working primarily with the treacle, and I will just jump in right into this area here. So I'm going to put down my Terminator again. And if you want, you can always, the top of it's taped. You can see a little bit of tape there. It's taped down here. If I lift it up, there's my underlying drawing. Okay, so that's like the angle of my Terminator. And it does. My Terminator needs to come up to about here. And if I, flip it down, it's actually okay here. It just needs to carve and kind of come up like a cartoon crescent moon. It really needs to feel like it goes around and make a nice oval. So this dark value is going to feel a little bit darker, mostly because once an oil paint it's dry, there is a sheen that's lost. It oxidizes and it becomes more of a matte finish, and it can change value subtly. So knowing that, it's not as big of a shift necessarily as acrylic paints, but you still want to be aware of that. So I'm going to put down this Terminator again. I'm going to tile it in. Now I have my points on it, and I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. And I'm going to be treating this, I'm going to try and finish this up in 2 layers just for the sake of the demo. But I really think that you could be using this more as a model of I would do another layer and then watch this one again, as I'm really going to go over and try to blend it. Because as a beginner, it's really hard to get those blends and keep the form. I'm used to it a bit more. I wouldn't say I've mastered it, but compared to where some of my students are, expect you to be after your second layer. Treat this video for your second and your third video. Alright, so there's my Terminator. And I'm going to work, so that's some of the corrections that I see. There's going to be more errors that I see because now that I know the pole comes out here and here, if I raise this, I can use a shadow. If I raise this up, I don't know if you can see it in the camera. If I raise this parallel up, this value here needs to come way up here. Okay, so I'm going to jump in and do a little bit of touch up here and there, and then move back into that area down here. Also, I'm probably going to change my camera right now. Okay. Camera has been moved. Let's move on. My Nice clean brush, nice dry brush. And let's continue on. So let's see how close my values are. Oops. Whoops. That's a nice thing though. Now that it's dry, I can clean my brush, and it does kind of move around a bit. So I can also take a clean bit of my paper towel and just dab it out. So that's the value that I want right there. That's my third value. And it needs to be a bit lighter. So I'll take a bit more white. Let's try that. I still feel lighter is needed. So and I would add a little bit at a time because while it's okay to go back and forth, you want to learn to go quickly. And when you're doing portraits or working outside where the light is always changing outside, getting your values done quickly is really an important lesson, consideration, necessity. So adding a little bit of time till it's right, until you learn the amount of pigment to use. I remember watching my instructor, my teachers, teaching me, and I was always just shocked at how well they move the paint. But then again, it just comes with practice. Okay, so let me move this pile. Back to there. Okay, good. Dry brush. And this one goes in here. And I would definitely go over this, you guys. I would go over every little blurred edge and practice this. They're going to make you do this if you study realism as a long-term goal. If you get into some of these real formal environments, go. It's a lot of practice that they make you do. Okay. And go all the way through, and I'm going to mix my number 2 value. Good. All right, and then my lightest value, which again just has a very small amount of pigment in it. I'm not using pure white. Okay, so my middle value is this, and let's, how close am I? 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is a little bit darker, but I like it, so I'm going to actually put this value, because I still felt like that was a big jump. So this is accidentally, my values are now accidentally a bit off, but I like it in this case because I do think that was a big jump. This could be lighter. So I'm going to just do the whole background again. And I'm tiling it on. Goes on a lot smoother. Mostly as I put it down, I want to be careful not to use too long of a stroke again. Always reloading the paint. It'll flow smoother. That's the nice thing about oil paint. Each layer on top flows smoother. You have more control over it. And if I get right up to it and create that harsh edge, I'm going to want to blur it again. So I'm going to do just sort of this top edge. And in this case, there's enough of a value. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. I'm using my softbox lighting today, so it should be better than my first video. My first video was shot with my phone, which has a decent camera in it. Not excellent, but decent. And I'm still going to remember, until I'm ready to really blur, soften edges and get in there, I'm going to leave at least a 2mm border around the objects. In this case, around the sphere. And the background. I kind of feel like after working with, I learned oils really well, better than I learned acrylics. I learned acrylics so that I could see kind of a combination of color studies, but also to learn how to teach it to my students. And there was a lot of I felt tedium going into the oil paints that I no longer take for granted, because these are the things that as you learn acrylics, you're unable to do, but it's possible because you get maybe 2 or 3 strokes and then it's dried. And if you add a retarder or a slow drying agent into your acrylic, you get a few more strokes, but it's watery. It's more liquid, more watery. So it's not as it's a balance of how much of that slow drying agent you add. All of that goes away when you're working with oil paints. In fact, there are agents you can add to oil paints to make them dry faster, or increase the drying time. You'll find a use for both. Mostly just by using it. I really wish I had more time to work on this. And then there are additional tips and tricks you can use for working wet into wet. For example, you can put your painting into the freezer, or into a huge piece of Tupperware so that it keeps it from drying. Drying for oil paints is mostly just oxidation. Air gets into it and starts drying it. So if you remove air, or the ability for air to easily oxidize, then it dries much, much slower. I've seen somewhere and heard somewhere that clove oil placed on a little bit of a cotton ball placed near your painting, or maybe somehow mounted above your painting and then put into the into the Tupperware, will keep painting oil paints wet for up to a month or more. I haven't done it. I've heard it. I want to try it. I have a deep freeze that I just I use that often. Paintings that I want to stay working wet into wet. Okay, so that's a good surrounding. I can still see a bit of a halo around it. I've got most of this area covered. My strokes are mostly invisible. There's a few hard edges here, so I'm going to address them real quick. And you'll remember as I talk about drawing and intro to drawing, everything straight lines and learning how to draw straight lines, getting your confidence up about straight lines. You can see how I hold my brush. I can't do this anymore. A lot of the control has come through my arm, so I really try to just rely on straight lines. Okay, I have two beads. I don't really see it, by the way. Once my values are matched really well, I don't always see the new layer, so I just have to, but it's there. If I were to smudge, whoosh, it would be ugly. So I'm going to brace my hand above. I have a couple inches. I'm going to soften this edge here. Yep, I can see it moving. I can barely feel this vellum underneath it. And mostly what I feel like I've just done is I've moved up this entire line. So I'm going to push it the other way, get my number 2 value here. Remember, this is 1.5, so my second value. And this is part of the exercise too, moving paint around, learning how the paint works. Such a great way to learn when you're doing something that is relatively unexciting. I mean, it's cool when you make this sphere. It feels good. You're accomplished. You've done something. But mostly this is about just learning the medium, the paints, how it moves around. All right, I push that line back down. It's good. This one feels pretty good. You can do a little bit more dark value to it here. And then my third value. Looks like my third value is actually a little bit darker than my original. By maybe part of a percentage though. Part of that could be just the difference in the matte. It's dry. Like I said, when it dries in a matte finish. The gloss finish that oil naturally has goes away. Great. So that's good for my second layer up here. 2, 3. I'll get this corner in here, but let's get my, it's too wet. Try my brush better. You know, kind of slowly sweep up till I get that contact point between the two, and then gently soften that line. I don't know why I'm talking softly. I'm talking to my painting because it's asleep. No, that looks better. That feels good. All right, so let's jump into the sphere, and I'm going to do the gradient here. Maybe I'll work on that correction really quick too, because again, if I'm going the distance from here to here, and that's the center of the oval, then the oval should have ended way up here. That's my second 1, 1.5, 2. I believe that's my 2 value. And my third value should be higher, right? Where is it? That's my third value. Okay, so now that I know that, I'm going to start working on my gradient. And I think I'm just going to paint, and then I'm going to narrate after. So let's see. See how this works. I'm making half marks, half mixes. And so from here to here, to create a half tone between my 4 and 5. We'll go to 5. Push that up. So here's my 3. And I'm going to move this because keep a clean paper towel. Your paper towel gets really contaminated and dirty. Some of us who like to conserve, it can be tempting to just want to keep conserving and finding a dry area, but folding it over even, you'll pick up pigment from the other side. So know when to get a new piece of paper towel. Mine's decent right now. Okay, so let's get 3. 3 needs to be up here. And so let's get 3.5. I am mixing with my brush, and I'm spinning my brush, because one thing that can happen is if you mix with one side of the brush, when you paint it, you'll pull a different value over. So you definitely want to, think dimensionally, 3-dimensionally. Okay, so 3.5, right? 1, 2, 3.5. Go right here. And essentially I'm making smaller steps now. And that striation is going to vanish. I want to bring this value up a bit more, because this will come over to here, I think. Okay, so the next one over here is going to be my 2.5. I originally thought it was kind of nerve-wracking to mix my values because it's been so much time, and now I'm going to muddy them up. But this is actually where all the painting happens, down here in the second layer. My original pigments, I put this one down just for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1.5. And this is where it's all going to happen, the subtleties in the face and the expressions. You'll see them if you go look up realist portraits, or portrait painter palettes, color mixing, portrait painter color mixing palette. You'll see it. You'll see how they have the original colors, the original pigments of the face, and then how they just blend it. And you just gotta jump in. If you ruin the color, oh well, wipe it off and create it again. Okay, that feels good. Get 2. And I'm going to lower 1.5. I really want this pouring. So here is going to be an interesting gradient. I'm actually just going to kind of mix a gradient, pulling pigment over into the white. And even as I'm mixing, I don't want to contaminate my bright white. So I'm just pulling paint up into it. Go over it one more time, then pull more paint into it. And I've created a gradient there. I can use that gradient. So let me go somewhere around here. Okay, that was too much. So let's get a little bit of this. 175, right? I'm getting into math about it. And as I blend these real similar values, you'll just feel luminant. Feels a lot better. I still see a band going on from here to here. So I'm going to bring in more of, I'm bringing in a bit more light. I'm going to have the light coming down a bit more. And you really want to find the right tile value and put it on. You don't want to mix here. That's not what this exercise is about. It's about knowing where to put the tile and putting it down. So I don't know if you can see this, but here's my original layer 1. Maybe this is what your second one looks like. And now this is what my third one's going to look like. And it should just be like super smooth when I'm done. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work up a couple and then work down a couple. And then I'll do the blending at the very end, because again, on the inside, because, around the edges and to the background last. Because I want to feel this sphere more. Alright, so let's go down to the bottom here, jump into the next value. I'm not creating a value between these two because they're very similar. I don't think I am. Maybe I am. Next one down. Here. Okay. So let's get a half value here. And it's still too light, too dark. There's too much of a step. So let's get a little bit darker value. That feels better. So let's go up further next to next level up. Somewhere near 3.5. Three. 2.5. 2. 2 in a part, 2 and 7/5. Too much paint. Let's wipe some of that off. Reapply just the tip. And let's get to somewhere in here, right? And I'm going to blend down. That's good. And then actual 1.5. One and a 7/5. And let's get in the 1 here to the center. Just going to bring it down, feather it right into that. So it's not right even with the other side. That's my center. That's good. All right, let's do the outside here. You. Okay. After I mix, I still want to wipe my brush down. Can't only apply. I'm only trying to get the very edge of it. I'm not loading this all the way up to the metal fairing. Okay, let's get this one here. I think I brought that value up too high. Go over it. And this partial value here. And we'll bring that over too. Wipe, wipe, wipe. Next value down. It's a half point, half step. And I think get in between a bit better. Doesn't feel right. It's still too dark there. Okay, so we'll put a tile over it. It's a little closer. This is too dark here. My tile might be too wide that I'm trying to create. Yeah, I think it is. I need to be careful. I'm really just trying to go here, not that far over. So let's just double check my work, put in the dark. But next step down. Next step down. Great. Now we get the half step. And then the half step. 1, 2, 3.5. And 3. Remember, I need to bring the darkness up on this side, so it is really going to get darker over here too. Relatively, just a few degrees when you're looking so close into something, you can feel like a large jump. In general, it's going to feel like the whole thing is getting darker too. That generally happens with oil paints. Your first layers are a lot lighter, and then it just gets darker. So trying to keep it 100% accurate the whole time, value-wise, is difficult. So, as a beginner, it's good to make it really bright and then just make it darker. It's easier to make it darker. It just happens. The darkness just happens. It builds up, traps more light, more pigment. Making something lighter can be more difficult. Okay, so 2.5. Let's go back to 3. Darn it. See? There. Got it in the wrong spot. So how do I get rid of that? I can wipe my brush clean and try to pull it off a little bit. And then I want to get the right value. Let's go to 2. And sort of smooth it out. Looks better. As I go up into here, I'm going to go to 175 right around here, right? I think. Looks good. Let's blur it. Soften it. One and a half. It's right about here. And let's get my bright value. Again up here. And 1.5 here. And it's too dark. More of the light value. That's 125 right around there, right? So let's put a tile of 125 in. That feels better, much better. All right, let's clean the brush. Step back, make sure the camera's still recording. It is good. 50 minutes just for that amount. All right, let's keep going. There's a jump there that I don't like. And I think maybe it's right here. Okay. I'll be able to soften this whole thing too. Or just go over and do another layer. So let's go ahead and grab, and I'm going to go one more layer all the way out. I guess I will blur it to the edge. Okay, so that's my 6 value. You can blur, soften. My 5.5 value. Right there. Wipe it clean, blur that edge, blur it out a little bit. Let's bring my middle value, this one, right? Make sure it matches out here. Good. Easier to fix away from the edge. And then let's bring it up close here. I'm going to get really close. pretty much right on the edge. And I'll work into it, and there's my lost edge right there. Right there. A lot of magic happens in those lost edges. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go to, that's my lost edge here, right? Okay, let's go to the next value, down 3. Get it into the sphere. Okay, that's soft value there. Let's get 3.5. Again, when mixing, wipe it off because you have clumps on there. And the clumps can be very frustrating to work with and finesse work. And this is all finesse. Okay, great. So now let's hit the blur. I'm gonna get a new paper towel. Okay, so 3.5. That all looks good about here. What is that? 3.5 here. No, I need a little bit more darker. Pull it up. Okay. 3. I'm kind of looking at the edge, and I'm kind of lightly blurring my vision. All right, let's go to 2.5. Something's happening that I didn't intend. What is that darkness in there? All right, so pulled it off. Clean my brush up. Get the Gamsol off. Let's try again. That was 3, or 2.5 or 3, right? So let's try 2.5. Go to 3. Dialing it down. Feels too light in here. Or maybe that's too dark. All right, so let's go to and that's a harsh edge, so I'm going to just come in right away and just kind of soften it with the 2. And then just lay down a tile. I'll push it back with my 4. That's my 4. All right, let's clean that brush off good. Soften that edge. I'm going to have to push that around a bit. So, trying to use just the corner of my very tiny brush here. This is a Trekell Red Sable 2. It's a smaller brush. Very nice. I'm going to blur this edge here, soften this edge right here. I say very nice. I'm not saying it is very nice. I'm more like saying I have a good feeling that it is nice and I can move on. I'm sure in 5 minutes, once it's completed, I'll go back to generally disliking it. I feel like I dislike most of my work, but I feel like that's also being an artist. So judgment aside, I have to just kind of go and say, okay, it's looking better, move on. All right, so 175. Right along the edge. Tile is down. 1.5. One, 1.25. And that's enough of room there so I can put the middle value 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Test it again. Good, works. We want to put down a little bit in an area where it's easy to clean up. At least I do. See if I can get that. Okay, so that's heavy paint. And let's bring it along to the top edge actually. Center pull, access. Okay. Drawing it off. I'm going to soften what I've done. I can't even feel it. I'm going purely on sight. Okay, good. So let's go to 1. Put it up in here in the pull. Very top where the light is. Okay, 1.25. Okay, so I can clean my brush off here and fix a couple of steps as I see them. Always cleaning the brush. Always keeping the brush so clean so I don't contaminate my gradients. That looks good. Let's do the other side now. Dark value. Semi-dark. 6.5. Move the terminator, so let's push it back. Get a nice soft sort of looks good. Next value. It's a nice tile. 5, so let's go 5.5. Actually, I'm gonna clean that off. 4, dark, 6, 5, 4. Let's go 4. It's not good. I think I got the wrong value. 4, right? Okay, so now 4.5. We had tile in between there. 5.5. Light tile in between there. 4, so let's go to 3. Three and a half. A bit more of that mixture right there. Paint definitely slides around. Oops, made a mistake. Let's get a little bit of light. Tap it out, clean the brush off, and then blur it, soften it. Okay, let's go to 2.5. Two. This particular area of my painting there is vellum showing up underneath. And then I want to hide it. By the end of this second layer, I want absolutely no vellum. I want only paint. 2.5. 2.25. And again, all the way up into my bright 1. And pull it out. Looks good. Do the next layer. I mean the next row. What do I call these stripes? I think I do these are stripes, yeah. Because these look like rows. But really we're laying down stripes, gradient stripes. Okay, my dark value. My darkest value, because I want my terminator to be really pulled out. That looks good. Let's go to 5. Okay, let's go to 5.5. And put a gradient between those two steps. Now, when you get better at this, you can make a more articulated, detailed gradient of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6.5, 4.5, somewhere in here before 7, 5, and you could make a sphere that way. I mean, that's the difference between a beginning painter and a more advanced painter, is that for portrait painting, you can do a grayscale, maybe do another grayscale, and then you're going to add in your color layers over and over and over, building up a lot of definition into 6 or 7 layers. Some painters get it done in like 3 layers because they really know their paint mixing really well. You eventually get to that with the indirect method. And the indirect method builds up a lot of confidence, it builds up a lot of strokes, so that eventually when you do an alla prima, or you do a one-sitting painting, it's all done in one. And it's not about luck, it's about skill. It's about the time you put into getting there. Okay, so 7, 6, 5, 4. Let's go to 4. That's my 4, right? Put it. There we go. Yeah, that's a 4. I put a dot there for my middle. Okay, 4. Okay, 4.5. Let's load that up. Soften. Let's go to 3. Try it about here. and 3.5. Good. 2. That's where my 2 is. 2.5. Nice and delicate. I feel like that's too bright there, so let's get a little bit more of a 3 in there. Bring it up just a little bit higher. Yeah, a little higher maybe. So we'll get to 2.5. Can bring higher up. And 2. 2.5. You should take breaks. Rest your eyes. Look out a window. Move your legs. Okay, let's go to 2.5. First, I'm going to mix a couple new. This is my 175. So, and let's get my 175. Actually, no, sorry, I'm going to get my 1.5. It's going to be right about here. There. Try to carve it. I'm going to figure out that other one. And then my 175, and I'll put it in here. And my 2. Right there. Then my 1. And I'll work backwards now. Nice bright 1. 1.5. Looks good. I think it could come down a little bit further here, but let's get the rest of this done. I think I have 2 more. I can do it in 2 more. You guys should probably be doing these in about 7 to 9 stripes per layer. I am going to blur a little bit more. That's good. Okay, great. Let's do the next one, which is going to be my 6. Guess I'm doing this in 7 too, right? And then we'll go to 5. Five and a half. Four. It really means that this should be higher up too over here. 4. 4, 4.5. Sometimes softening just means laying the brush on it and letting the natural movement of your hand, or making really tiny circles is enough to soften it. So in between each of these tiles, as they make the rows, we make the stripes and we line them up with the rows Sort of. We're really just trying to feel the form of it at this point. It's a better way to put it. But it is, in a sense, putting down rows of color and ovals. You're going to get little blotches and inconsistencies. And you're going to want to smooth it out. So really, you just put your brush on it and little tiny circles. Okay, so that's decent. I want to bring my Terminator up before I get too far away. Okay, great. Definitely want to clean my brush after going from that to my midtones. 3.5. And blur. And 2. Something happened there. Something was way off. I must have missed 3. How did I miss 3? Give it darker and pull that part out. Okay, so let's go to 1.5. Starting to lose where I'm at. 1. 1.75. 2. Who knows? It may actually be helping me saying these numbers out loud. I know I get lost sometimes if I'm just in my head or listening to music. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to put my layer, my mid value 4. That's 4, right? Yeah, that's 4. So I'm asking myself questions. It's a part of me that just wants to do and move through it and get it done. Whether I'm enjoying a particular portion of the painting or not. I guess I enjoy most of it anyways, but some of it I want to get done quicker. So, by asking, I'm just double checking and giving myself another minute to, or second to, is that what I really want to do? Okay, so I've got the edge of the ball, sphere, and I'm ready for my final. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to push this back out because I brought the line in, distorting the shape. Okay, let's get that final tile, stripe of tiles down. So let's go 6. Six and a half down. Let's bring up my Terminator, straight 7. Five. Okay, 5.5. 4. Four and a half. All right, let's go back to 5 here. Oops. 5, let's go 4.5. 4. 4 right here. Okay. And let's bring this down. Well, it's still dry underneath, so I can clean that up. Okay. Now, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Okay, that's good. Working on that softened edge and then pull it down. Let's go 3.5. And just a couple strokes there. 3.5. That's good. And then 4 goes here. Trying to clean up what I have before I go too far away from it. 4.5. 5. And let's work up, and then I'll do this area here. So that looks good. I'm going to soften these edges as I've completed. Oops. Where does 2 go? So 2.5 goes right about here. A bit of 3, soften that edge. Okay, let's blur that to the background. Let's go 2.5. No, sorry, 1.5. And 7.5, 1.75, and 2. Okay, moving things around, so I'm going to get some for the background. It's good. Clean it. Dry it thoroughly. Blur it. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's go from the top down. So 1. And I pushed it too far out, so I really want to get that 4 value and push it back into place. Soft, quick. Again, not really feeling, in fact, not feeling the vellum at all. It's kind of a point there. Right, so let's try to get that point down. Good, point is down. Now, let's work on some of these areas here. That area is, let's see, 7, 6, 5, between 4 and 2. So let's try a 3-ish. And start blurring gently up, softening. That looks good. Let's get a little bit more. Let's get 4 though. Soften up. And some of these hard little edges. I don't know if you can see it in the video or not. All right, so let's get the, I'm going to get the rest of this side in here, which was a 3, right? Let's see, 3. Yeah, so let's get the 3 in. More 3. That looks good. So let's clean the brush and start softening it in a bit. Good. So it's a bit of a divot. Okay, so I'm gonna put a lot of 6.5. I'm gonna put 6 in here for the reflected area. This is all 6. I'm putting that in my sphere. Because maybe it's still reflecting up. And then I'm going to make 6.5. I'm going to put it right up in this area up here, and I'm going to blur almost to the edge. Almost. Soften and blend. More of that 6.5. Be a little bit more 7 into it. I want it all just softened. Not a perfect. Now in the world, in the real world, and not in our imagination, there'd be more reflections. Maybe there'd be other highlights. You can blow out the. It would be a different game. But for now, the conceptualizing of how the paint works and modeling a sphere is the exercise as well. creating convincing gradients. Alright, so I'm going to put a little more 7, and I'm going to bring that terminator down just a little bit. Reapplying. And remember to stand and take breaks. Now, just for a little bit of interest, I'm going to take my 5.5 value. I'm going to add just a little bit right here. And I'm going to zigzag it in a bit, because I really want it to be a little shinier, reflecting more of that table. And then back to this really dark 7. I mean 6.5, 6, 7, 5. And into a pure 7 contact. Lost edge between the actual shadow. And then the shadow is... This is a good time to look at it and make sure your points are lined up. Is your shadow level, or is it shooting off in some weird direction? Because if it's shooting up in some weird direction, it's not really flat surface. It'll give it momentum. Please don't bark, dogs. I can't handle it. Quiet. And then we took a little bit of value and just sort of went out. And in this case, I'm going to be really careful and not go to the edge and use that subtle difference as part of the shadow. Okay, now I'm all the way out to 6. 6, 7, 5. All right, the dogs were quiet. And just a little bit lighter on the outskirts. Shadows get really soft the further they get away from the source. And you can look at it here. My brush, the point, and then it just fades to a lighter gradient. Okay, so things have moved around here, and I'm going to carve them back in with my 3rd value. And if you've mixed an accurate value, then you don't need to fill in the whole area. Just enough to help you carve things around and right, let's soften that edge here. Maybe just a little bit of a 4.5 right there. Maybe here too. and mix it in. And pushing and pulling to get some of that dark value. Pure 7. And brush out here. Let's get some of the pure 6. And some of that there. Cool. They look nice. This value is different, so I'm gonna leave that edge there. I'm gonna get my 4, and I'm gonna see if I can get my 4 real close. Oops. My 4. And let's finish off the background. All right. And I want a bit more of a blur here. More 4. Bring that back down. Okay. And there's something wrong here. Okay, so let's get the 3. Very nice. Finish it up. Looks like I'm going to finish it up. I'm going to just finish the whole thing up. Okay. Get the brush cleaner. And let's get a few more imperfections removed. Just moving paint around, barely feeling. In fact, I don't feel it. I'm not feeling the vellum. Just going on look and feel. Let's get 3. And let's... This can be a hard area down here. Get that nice crisp little corner. And then bring out the corner of the shadow again. Doesn't have to be too big of separation because it's so close to each other. It's going to really have the same value. You can use, so it doesn't need to be declared as separate. I think I'm good. That's my second layer. So I'm going to use my second darker layer now. That's 2. We can look at the before and after. I'll put that up here. As I kind of look at this now, I feel like, again, if you're doing this, you guys, really, this is an exercise that is about trying to stay within the lines, because you're going to have your original line drawing, and then you paint over your line drawing, and if you're not careful, things move. So what we're trying to do is just understand how paint works on its own in an environment similar to how we're going to want to use it ideally, creating realistic things, still lifes, mountains, valleys, water, fish, animals, you name it, portraits eventually. So 2 to 3 to 4 layers. This turned out decent. I'm happy with it. I think, there's always more work that can go into it. And I can soften this little area here. The main thing about your work is that you take your time, and each layer you try to get 50% more accurate. And that's the general thought process of painting, oil painting, realism. So thanks for watching, and let me know if you have questions during our painting sessions. So take care, guys, and have a great day.